Apparently, this is Liberation Day. That would be the day a lot of the Trump administration tariffs, which have been talked about for months now, will go into effect. The thing I cannot stop worrying about are Argentine peanuts. So let me explain. Back in 2010, Argentina's then president, Cristina de Kirchner, wanted to bring manufacturing back to Argentina. She was worried that Argentina was losing too many good jobs and was just importing too much stuff. She started to put a bunch of tariffs in place, 30%, 40%, 50%. This would encourage people to buy Argentine goods because the price of imported goods was going to get really, really high. For other industries, things got a little more complicated, like car makers. So for car makers, Kirchner made this rule that they could import as many cars as they wanted, but only if they exported something of equal value. So what this meant for car makers was that they would either have to make their cars in Argentina, which some car makers did, like Fiat and Renault. But for other companies, it meant that they just had to find something really valuable to export out of Argentina to offset the price of the cars that they wanted to sell there. So this led to some very, very strange things. So, a big Porsche distributor who wanted to sell tens of millions of dollars worth of Porsches in Argentina started buying up olives and Malbec wine and exporting it all over the world, like tens of millions of dollars worth of Malbec wine and olives in order to offset all the Porsches that they wanted to bring into the country to sell. And then all these other car makers started doing the same thing. You had BMW exporting tons and tons of Argentine rice. You had Subaru exporting chicken feed, like buying up chicken feed in Argentina and exporting it all over the world. And you had Mitsubishi and Hyundai exporting millions and millions of dollars worth of peanuts. They started buying up peanuts from all of these farmers in central Argentina and sending them out all over Asia and Europe. Now, for a while, this worked really well because you had all these foreign companies investing all of this money into Argentina, right? I mean, you had Fiat and Renault building factories, hiring Argentine workers. And then you had, Hyundai and Mitsubishi bankrolling all of these peanut farmers. So all this money was pouring into Argentina. People were making money, people were getting jobs, and auto sales were climbing by 30% a year. But then a few things started to happen. So, first of all, making all these deals with peanut farmers and buying up all these olives and building factories in Argentina got really expensive. And so car makers started passing those costs onto car buyers. And all of a sudden, you had cars that were just regular sedans costing $60,000 and less than a year later costing $100,000. So then people stopped buying the cars and sales tanked. At the same time, you had car makers having trouble getting the materials and the car parts they needed to make their cars because of all these rules around imports. So that stopped up production. So factories started furloughing workers and eventually laying them off. It only took a couple of years for protectionist tariffs to really strengthen Argentina's economy and cause it to grow, and then pull it back down and cause a really terrible crash, eventually an economic crisis which Argentina is still climbing out of today. So you might understand why last week, when Hyundai announced it was going to spend about $5 billion to buy a steel plant in Louisiana, I got really nervous. President Trump was thrilled about this. He said, look, money's pouring into our country. This is very strong proof why tariffs work. I got a very strong stomach ache. Obviously, Argentina's economy and the US's economy are different, but when governments have tried to put big economic controls in place, it almost always ends in disaster. Because, yeah, at first, you've got shiny factories and cheering crowds and new Fiats rolling off the line. But in the end, you just have like a South Korean car company selling really overpriced Argentine peanuts to France, all so they can sell a $100,000 sedan to an Argentine person who just got laid off because car prices are too high.